everyone to Global Citizen Podcast. Today on the show, I have Joseph Droschlagen. Welcome, Joseph.
Really good to be here with you, Sally. I'm excited for a really powerful and good conversation between us.
I am too. And a lot of people who listen to the show know that I talk a lot with expats and people who've moved abroad, and could be some of the listeners right now, or either other people that I've had clients. A lot of the times I hear I would love to move abroad, or I want to, but, and the but is a number of reasons and legitimate reasons and concerns. So I want to think, like, how do we help people get over the but?
That's great question. Because you're right. It's real. Anybody who says
Hmm.
but, whatever they say afterwards, that's real for them. That's their reality.
Hmm.
But it's coming from a place of conditioning, programming within us that's acting that out. And so the desires we have, we're meant to experience those desires. But because of the programming that's saying you can't do that, or you don't have enough funds to do it, or you this or that, or whatever reason it is they're not, it's not factual.
Right.
And so what I help people to do is look at exactly where are you right now? 2 points of reference. Where exactly are you right now? Forget about the buts, the ifs, ands, coulds, shoulds, all that. Where exactly are you right now? And where do you want to be in your life? Where right now, if you could choose, where would you want to be with that? And so from those 2 points of reference, I can help anybody gain into that where they want to be point. But in doing so, what we're going to do is we're going to face those buts. And
Right.
they're part of the subconscious. I won't go into all the science of it and stuff, but it's part of the subconscious, which the subconscious is what triggers our brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So that
Hmm.
means somebody wants something of what they want, but the brain waves kick in and tell them why they can't. They tell them the buts. They tell them all this stuff and everything else. And we can easily identify those buts and then shift those to open up that avenue. So instead of somebody settling on mediocrity, they can go for the full enchilada of what they desire. And watching people do that over and over, I told you, I'm so blessed that I get to help people do this in their life, Sally.
So what are then about if I'm saying, yeah, in theory, that sounds good. And I know I need to work on the subconscious mind. I've heard it before. I've tried, but it hasn't worked for me.
Yeah, well
I'm going to
played.
be using that word a lot today for some
No, I
reason.
love it. I love it. It's a perfect place too, and it will be throughout the entire episode. But yeah, a lot of people have tried. I tried it for like I started doing these works when I was 22 years old, and I wanted to own my own business. I wanted to inspire, motivate, lead millions of people to live better lives. But I had no idea how to do it. So
Hmm.
coming from that point, as I started learning things, as I started to look into some of the subconscious and the mindset and things like that and stuff, it seemed hokey pokey to me. It seemed somewhere out there. But what I would find in my reality is I knew what I wanted. I just couldn't ever get there. And I thought it
Hmm.
was the outside conditions. I thought it was my finances. I thought it's where I grew up. I blamed all kinds of other things for it. But what I came to realize, there was a but. But what I came to realize was it was all based on that conditioning within me. That's what was stopping me. In that subconscious is a motherboard of programming, patterns,
Hmm.
paradigms, beliefs, all of that experiences that we don't even have ourselves. Somebody tells us about, and it's in that programming. And so that motherboard is what triggers our brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So the mind, if you look at the total mind, is always trying to protect us and keep us safe and things like that, is trying to drive us into
Hmm.
that comfort zone of, I'll get more money and then I'll do it. Or I'll wait till I get older, or I'll wait until this, or wait until that. And that time never comes for so many people. So what we can
Right.
do is we can identify those buts and all of that. And we can reprogram that very quickly to start opening up. So instead of hearing the voice in our head telling us why we can't or why we shouldn't and all those reasons, we start to hear about how we can, and we start building that excitement for. And all of a sudden, and that's how my clients achieve more than what they're looking for. But one of the things that's really important, it took me a long time, a lot of finances and efforts and everything to understand. So often, mindset is taught as a one size fit all. If you do A, B, and C, you'll get D. If I do A, B, and C, I'll get D. But in reality, it never works that way. And the reason it doesn't is because we are unique individuals. So once I started understanding this stuff in coming out and helping other people, it had to be set up so it worked off the uniqueness of every individual who put it on. So I don't have a plan that says you do these things and here's what you get. What I do instead is I work off of the individual based on their programming and based on their desires. And we start walking through, we develop a vision for what that is they really want. We get really honed in on, and then we start bridging that gap from where they are to where they want to be. In that process, we start putting habits in place, develop systems of accelerating habits. So we start finding out from the individual, what do you really enjoy doing? What really lights you up and ignites you? And then we do that more often because that starts opening up the door to greater results. Does that make sense,
Right.
Sally? I know there's a lot in there.
Yeah, no, you know what? It makes sense. And it to me, as you were saying it, what popped into my head was very much like fad diets. And go on the keto diet. Everybody loses weight on keto. No, they don't. Some people don't function well without carbs. Go on the carnivore diet. Everybody, you just need to eat meat. No, some people need carbs and fruits and vegetables, or go on this. And it does well for some, but it doesn't do well for everybody because at a cellular level, we are all different. And I've said that to people before who are, dieting. I said, for one, diet's not a good word. It should be a healthy lifestyle. And two, what your body needs is different. That's why some people are allergic to things. Other people are not. Some people, have different sensitivities, different react. And so even though I'm talking with food in the body, I think that way people can relate. It's the same thing mentally. And I also believe that what we consume makes a difference. I generally do not watch mainstream media. I get a few highlights of news on my phone and I quickly scroll through just the headline to see. And I realize too, if I push the button, I'm going to get more information like this. Do I really want to read this article? Is it important? Is it just a clickbait headline? And is it going to make a difference in my life? And if the answer to most of those are no, I just keep scrolling past. The odd time I do because I still want some awareness of what's going on in the world. But then it's a quick skim through and I'm done because it's easy even for me. And I'm a pretty positive person and I feel like I look for those silver linings. But I could easily go down the rabbit hole of the world's turning to crap. It's horrible. It's over. We are done and finished. What's the point? Yes. And that's easy to do from a positive perspective. And so we need to be aware of what we are feeding our mind as well. And I mean, we can't go back and change. I mean, we can, it's harder though, but what we learned as children and grew up, sometimes I say to people to question why. Why do you believe or think that? And some of it is that programming of the school we went to, what our parents said. And I even just recently talked to a friend of mine. We were talking about a friend of theirs and kind of what they went through. And I said, but you have to realize what your parents went through. So I have a friend of mine and her parents came from communism, Poland. And so she struggles with a number of things, like she's thinking of starting her own business, but the security of leaving a job is very hard. And I get it. It's hard to begin with, but she's got certain things. And I said, but you have to think that's your parents putting those things into your mind, which is not their fault because that's how they lived. Right. And they lived through certain things. And so they did to protect, but we don't think of, it's hard for us to change our mindset because our situation and life is now different than our parents and grandparents.
Absolutely. One of the ones I face with a lot of people who have like a business idea, let's say, and they're working in corporate, or on the assembly line or someplace that they're working and stuff, is they still have it. Because when I was a kid, you got a job. My grandfather, he had a job at Chrysler doing seats, and he lived a whole career until he retired from doing that. You have police officers. Now we don't. The world isn't that environment now. Right. That we look at quarterly numbers and everything else and make adjustments on, and people have no problem. It's not. There's not the security there that there was back when we were kids. But we have, like you said, we have that programming that continues to play out when we're looking at things. So somebody that wants to start a business, same exact thing really as somebody that wants to move abroad, and we start getting that conflict going on in the voice we hear in our head and stuff telling us why we shouldn't. And it's not, like I said, it's not factual. It's not based on true reality of today.
Right.
And we follow that and we hold ourselves up and we go through life and we end up, talking to people on their deathbeds who didn't do the things that were most important that they desired to do. And I'll tell you, I experienced that with my dad before he passed away. That is such a hard thing to hear somebody that you care, for me, that somebody I really loved and admired and stuff like that, to have that conversation and to hear them say those things. I think that's part of the motivation that finally helped me break away from corporate America and say, I don't care what happens. I just can't keep living that life.
Right. It is important. And so before I first moved away from Canada back in 2011, and I really, to a certain degree, I felt like, I don't want to use the word black sheep because people kind of think like that's the bad one, but I was like the odd one. I didn't know anybody who wanted to move abroad and live in a different country. Like I knew people did it, but most times then, it was more like people got transferred for work or they immigrated their whole family for a better life and they would come to Canada or places. But for people to just leave Canada because they don't like the weather and didn't want to be there anymore was not kind of quote normal.
Yes.
And I thought I was very strange. And when I moved to Costa Rica, that was my first move. I kind of like found my people in the sense of I met so many other people who had left their home countries all over the world, moved to Costa Rica. Some were part-time, as in they were there for an indefinite, it could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. They weren't really sure. And others were, no, this is our home. This is where we're going to stay. And some unsure. But then that's when I realized, wow, there's so many more people like me in the world who are wanting just something different, wanting a different lifestyle, some is just more of a relaxed, slower pace. Some just like they surfing outdoor sports. There's a ton of different reasons, but that's when to me, I found, wow, there's so many people who want to do it. So for people who are, unfortunately watching the media or listening to friends and family, they say things because they love us and they want to protect us. And they don't want us to leave because they're going to miss us. And so somewhat it's their own self-interest why they say things to keep us where we're at.
Anybody giving us their opinion, it's always 100% of the time coming from where they are, not where we are and want to be. When I left corporate America as a vice president of sales and had the paycheck and the vehicle and golf membership and everything else and stuff, some of my friends that I've had throughout my entire 28-year career quit talking to me because they could not understand why I would do something like that. And I understand why they couldn't, because even if with their desires of doing something like that, there's no way they would step up to that because they were closed-minded. And the worst thing that somebody can be, to have a strong desire to do something different in life, like move abroad or switch career or something like that. The enemy working against them stronger than anything else is a closed mind, not having an open mind. We want to figure out exactly every single step and how it's going to work and lay it out and things like that. Now it's one thing when you're talking about financially and looking at your finances and how you live there and cost of living, all that stuff makes sense. But they want to do every little step, but life never happens according to our little plan and our steps.
It certainly doesn't.
So what it is it's opening up to that and then really enjoying the adventure of it as it's unfolding and happening and coming together and everything else. I've moved from Detroit, so I don't know where you're at in Canada, but we're not far from country to country in Detroit. And
I was from Calgary, Southern Alberta region, but when I left,
nice.
I left Calgary.
Nice, and then really cold too.
Yeah, yes, that's a good part of the reason why I left.
But and now so I've gone from Michigan to Wisconsin, back to Michigan to Iowa, but and things like that. And now I live how I've always wanted to live. I live in the mountains of South Carolina, and I'm 5 minutes away from my closest trout stream, where I can go out and get a trout in the morning, bring it home, cook it for breakfast, or waterfalls, or jeeping trails, hiking trails, things like that, and stuff, motorcycling roads, and but there was a lot of things that were coming up in my head when I was doing that transition, because that's a big change, living from big towns like Detroit, Milwaukee, things like that, to the living literally in the mountains of South Carolina. I think I'm 1,700 foot elevated over the closest
Wow.
town to me and stuff. So there's which works well for somebody that likes to hang glide, because you have more opportunities of places to run off of. But
Right.
but yeah, but that fear, that those, and that's the other thing too, a lot of people will face, when they won't even fully look at the desire they have. So what we do is we look at, okay, meet somebody like me, and look at, define what it is you really want. Forget everything else. Just what do you want? So many people can't even tell you that, what they want.
That
Because
is
what
true.
happens is they'll start thinking about it, Sally, and it'll start getting big. It'll hit some trigger of nerves or fear or something, and they'll start backing down what they want. So that's what I mean when we live off the mediocre, pieces of what we want,
Mhm.
because we're afraid to even look at that full gamut. And
Right.
there's so many reasons for that, but you can identify that and shift that so quickly that you start opening up to that.
Hmm. And I think too, a lot of people, it doesn't have to be like one massive step. Like you just don't all of a sudden one day, it's very rare that one day people just pick up all their stuff, they sell it, and a week later they're gone. I mean, there's processes and residency and stuff doesn't allow it to happen that quickly. But okay, maybe if you're going to be a digital nomad, but there are those steps, as you said, to slowly change things. And one for an easy, because I travel quite a bit and I travel alone. So a quick example for people with that, I say to people, I said, okay, you know what? Just even in your home city, go for dinner by yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
One little thing, then it's like, oh, if I'm alone, if I can go for dinner by myself. And then another is go to a town or a city that you like, go by yourself.
Yeah. Go to a movie.
Go to a movie by yourself. Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
little things that, and even those changes, then it's like, oh, well, I can do that by myself. I don't have to have people around. I can be even in my home city or travel to nearby places by myself. And sometimes even those little steps
Mm-hmm.
start changing that mindset of what we can do.
Yes, they will. And then we go out and we explore those things, and we do those things, and we get the results. And sometimes we're like, I'll never do that again, and because of the fear alone, so people can back away from that. And what I've developed in what's now referred to as the SMT method, is it helps to identify and grow and build that, what's called a dynamic vision for your life, what it is you truly want to experience. No bars hold, no limits to it. And then from there we start, because that in itself is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we start stepping into that and start taking steps into it, it bumps up against that programming. And so we have tools where we can shift that programming right then to open up more. So it's not a drudgery, or it's not a forcing myself to do something I don't want to do, and all of that stuff. It actually becomes very exciting very quickly, because we get the vision, which after we get through the fear of that and shift that, now all of a sudden we got the excitement of seeing our full vision of what we truly want to experience in our life. And then as we start taking steps and we start seeing that open up, it becomes a thing of pulling us into it, rather than us having to kind of struggle to keep it going and stuff like that. And it's just amazing to see people go through that process, and they still experience a transformation,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have to force themselves to face every fear and go through that and everything else in order to do it. It's a way to where it can be like an enjoyable pathway or process of going
Right.
through it.
Right. And I think a lot too is doing, and then also kind of following people who do it. Like have mentors. And there's a way to there's many ways of having mentors. That's actually working with somebody like yourself. But then there's also too people who have done things that you're interested in, and follow them on
Yeah.
their social media. If there's biography about them. Sports people is a great example of that. I mean, there's so many fans of some of the best athletes in the world, and maybe somebody's not going to be that best athlete, but how many read their
Yes.
biographies? How many follow them? Know stuff about them? And you can do that same thing of whether you are moving abroad or, as you said, you want to leave your job and start something new, or you just even moving to another state. And there's those concerns of listen to other people, watch what they've done, and nothing is going to be smooth and easy. There are, I mean, but that's life. Like, you have
Well, it takes
challenges in your
effort.
home city right now.
It takes effort, but it doesn't have to be hard. And one of the things I loved about what you said, because there's mentors or people doing things that we want to do and things like that. If we start following that person, the way somebody will know whether they need somebody like me is if they start seeing how they're different than that person that's out there doing it.
Hmm.
In other words, where, well, yeah, it's possible for them. They grew up with a silver spoon or gold spoon, or things like. If you start noticing things like that, then you got
Yeah.
some programming going on that's keeping you limited in things, and shifting that will open doors very, very quickly to achieve that vision, and to do it with more joy than struggle, to do it with more excitement than fear, to do it where you're pulled into it more than being pushed into it.
Hmm. Yeah, because if you're struggling and you're fighting it, you're just not going to do it.
No,
It's
at
like
some point it's
knowing,
too heavy, too
yeah,
hard.
yeah, and then forget it. It's not for me.
Mhm.
And that part of the brain goes, "See, I told you I was right."
Well, ultimately, our brain, the purpose of our brain is to solve complex problems. So, the
Hmm.
mindset's part of the brain. So our mind is always working to bring solutions. Our mind is always trying to place us in the safest place possible, which we call the comfort zone.
Yes.
Because outside that comfort zone, we don't have as much, we have full control inside our comfort zone. We don't have growth. We don't have expansion. We don't have our greatest visions. We don't have any of that, but it's comfortable in there because we have the
Right.
control. We know what's going to happen next and what's not going to happen and everything else in there. But to get to our visions, to get to our dreams and our true desires at their full experience, it's the other side of our comfort zone.
Yeah. It reminds me of, it was a podcast that I was listening to, and I can't think of the guy's name right now, but I can picture him. And I don't know if he said it or if somebody had said it to him on his podcast, but he had said, the greatest, like, with whatever we're doing, whatever situation we're at, like if it's work, if it's health, if it's moving, if whatever it may be, so the thing that we're like, there's a thing that we know we need to do, and there's a thing that gives us the most resistance. For some reason, we know we need to, but like, we're really resisting it. When we do that one thing, it's usually not nearly as bad as what we think it is. It doesn't take us nearly as long as we think it does. And that usually will, I'll use the word catapult. So that wasn't the word that he used, but that's the thing that will help us get to that goal quicker than we even known. And we're doing all these other things on the side. And avoidance is one of them that we're not doing, or we're keeping ourselves busy with other things. We said usually there's one thing that we know, we're like, oh, I know I should do that, but I'll do it later, or I'll wait, or whatever. And when we do that one thing, that helps us to realize it wasn't as bad, it wasn't as hard. And the other things that we need to do, it brings us closer to whatever that goal is that we want.
Absolutely. And the way you said that, I mean, it's logical. It's logical. There's no substance in our fears. Now, people will say, well, if the stove is hot and you touch the stove, you're going to get burned. And I go, that's not a fear. That's a knowing. Because when
Yeah,
we're
that's
little
a
kids, we touch a
reality.
hot
That's
stove and we get burned.
factual.
So that experience is embedded in us. We know it. But our fears, there's no reality to them. It's false evidence appearing real. So what
Mm,
happens is our fears are so wide we can't get around them, and they're so tall we can't get over them. But almost always, when we go through it, it's paper thin because there's no real substance to it. And I'll give you a really quick example of this, Sally. Is a little over a year ago was my first run off of a 2,000-foot mountaintop with strapped to a hang glider. And it was just me and
there's
the
some
hang
fear
glider.
in that. I would have some fear with that.
I stood up there on the ramp, and you have like 3 steps and you're in the air. And I stood up there, and I got the all clear and stuff, and I'm holding it, and man, my stomach started going, don't do that. Like I could hear the voice in my head, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then so you're supposed to walk, jog, and run, but you really only have 3 steps. So you want to take off pretty quick, yeah, but not run. So I take the first one, it's louder and louder. And the second step, I can feel my heart beating in my throat and everything. And then the moment my feet left the ground, it was beyond anything, beyond what I thought the experience would even be like. It was true ecstasy. Wow. And that's the same thing with our fears. Just the other side of that fear, we get to achieve our greatness. And our greatness can be living abroad. Our greatness can be starting a business. Our greatness can be getting into retirement and really enjoying it, rather than the fears that tell us, you know what, if you stop working, you're going to die soon. And all of those things and stuff. And, I love this quote by Wallace Wattles, and taking us back to the comfort zone. So he says, if you are not consciously choosing to be rich, excellent, and healthy, then you are unconsciously choosing to be poor, mediocre, and unhealthy. Wow. That comfort zone is unconscious living. We're living unconsciously. We're just going through the mode over and over and over and stuff again.
That's when I say you're alive, but you're not living.
Beautiful.
You're alive, you're breathing, your heart's pumping, you're going through the motions, you're doing the day-to-day stuff, but you're not really living.
Yes. And the way this ties directly into what we're saying with those buts is we have to forego really living to follow those buts and what they're telling us. And that's not, like you said, that's not consciously living. That's not expanding. That's not doing what we're here to do, which is fulfilling those desires, to truly live, to the most we can live, to get to the end and not have those regrets of what we should have. Because you know what? At the end, in the final, from what I've seen with my dad and some other people, but with my dad, there's no buts.
No.
There's no excuses. There's no reasons that he could come up for not doing those things.
Right.
So it's like a trap of living in that, so unconsciously in that bubble of that comfort zone. But it's not real living.
It's kind of been something that I've been thinking about the last little while. And it's like, I've always known, but it's to truly think, when we think of the universe, it's beyond what we know, but just as what we know with the planets that we know of and Earth, like, we're a planet in the middle of whatever space that we still don't even know. And we're floating in a space on a planet that is warmed by the sun, which is another planet in space. Like, when you think of the solar system, like, it's kind of mind-boggling in itself. And then to come down to think all of the growth on Earth, the trees, the mountains, the water, the everything, and then how we are, like, we're a human being. And like, what are the odds of that? And how does that work? And aren't we supposed to have all these amazing experiences, not just like, we're here? Like, that is amazing to begin with. But look at all those experiences we could have, the good and the bad. Not that I want people to experience bad things, but I mean, loss and heartbreak and things is part of life. Like, I will one day be gone, and there will be at least a few people, I hope, are sad that I'm gone. If everybody's happy I'm gone, then I've done some bad things in my life. But
I can't see that being the case.
I can't see that either. There are a few people that like me. But and like, those experiences that we have is all part of being here. And so to just, I guess for me, it's like to just go through the motions. We have times in life where we just, we're struggling, we're getting through, and there's that period of going through, but then we're supposed to do great things. And that is different for every single person. What somebody do is what is great for you and brings you joy and happiness and excitement and everything are the things that you need to do and try and experience. And also do some things that's like, I don't know if I like that or not. Let me give it a try and do oh, heck no, I'm not doing that again because that sucked. That's
Yes.
the experience. That's part of life. That's
Yes.
living.
It is. It is. And you said that well too. Even the things we don't want to happen, you know, we lose somebody, and there's heartbreak to that and it hurts and it's painful and everything. But because we have the capability to love, without that part, we'd never get the other one. And most of the things we
Right.
experience, even these butts and things like that, most of those things we experience, the only purpose of them truly is to help lean more into what we want. Because if you think
Mm.
about the energy that comes with the fears, if you think about the energy that comes with a but statement and things like that, that's if you took that same amount of energy and could put it into your vision or your desire of what it is you want to achieve or accomplish in your life, you're boosting that up. You're making the potential for that to be real so much higher. But what happens is we don't know that. So we build up the buts and we build up the fears and we get in bed with those and we, grow those to the point
Mm.
where we're truly crippled from taking an action into it against it.
Right. I saw somewhere, and I can't. I'm terrible at remembering where and who I hear and see things from, but
Yeah.
it was something that they did studies on the human body, and they put
Mm-hmm.
people in a situation where they like not like so they were in a room and they would tell them about a situation. Something would be very exciting, like they won a trip, they won the lottery, they're going on a holiday, they're meeting their idol, like something like they're super, super excited about. And
Yes.
then other people in another room, they were told like something bad. They had to go into a room full of spiders if they were scared of spiders, or they had to
Mm-hmm.
like things that they were afraid to do. They had to do public speaking and they're terrified of doing public
Yeah.
speaking. But when they analyzed the body with all the things that they were checking were exactly the same. The only difference between fear and excitement was in fear, we're expecting a bad outcome, and the excitement, we're expecting a good outcome. But physiologically to the
Yes.
body, it's the exact
Yes.
same thing. It's just us having that expectation of it's going to work out and it's going to be good, or this could be really bad, and we have that negative thought behind it.
Absolutely. And really the only difference between fear and excitement, it feels the same exact way. What really changes the two, I've learned, is our breathing. When we
Ah,
feel fear, we hold our
mhm.
breath. We do that, right? And
Yeah.
what happens is then that starts kicking off for everything to rise up because we're holding our breath. So it builds that anxiety and all of that. When we feel excited, we're like, whew, we breathe into it. And that lets it out, which means everything is continue, to going in that direction. So really, I've had examples where I've actually tested this. I've had clients who tested it and stuff. Is really when we get into a place where we feel fear, if we just start breathing fully and not uncomfortable where you're choking, but like full breathing, we'll feel that fear lower
Go
down the
down.
intensity of that fear. But when we hold our breath, it just increases that intensity. So even in that, somebody
Mm.
looking at their desire of what they truly want, and you start feeling that, just pause and take a few breaths and bring everything back down and calm. And you'll find you'll still have the desire, but the fear has weakened.
It's weakened. Hmm.
Yeah.
The human body and mind is so fascinating.
And it's so amazing the way it works independently, but interdependently at the same time.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, my whole life is studying this, and I never get bored. I never get to a point of going, okay, I know, and it's like I want to know more. I want to know more, and
Right.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, we're here, and I've always said like I've always said it in an easy way. The brain puts kind of that fear into us because it's to protect us in a way. Its job is to keep us
and
alive
to protect
and
us,
to keep
yes,
us safe. And that's the comfort zone because even if Like even when we're in situations, not when we're, but even when people are in situations when we hear about domestic abuse and violence, and why don't people leave? To a lot of people, it's just like, well, why wouldn't you leave? It just doesn't make sense. That is kind of that unknown because they know what to expect. And I've even heard different talks from people that said, they grew up in a home like that. And they would know when dad came home at a very young age, like 5 years old, they learned how to read dad to see how much he had to drink, what to do, and they were able to start reading that because that was their self-preservation protective mode as to, can I approach, can I talk, am I keeping my younger sisters and brothers safe, is he okay, and those types of things, and can learn that at a very young age, that protective.
Yeah.
And that's what our brain is kind of designed to do.
And a lot of that stuff, I always talk about there's the mindset side of it, right? The programming,
Mm-hmm.
the conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to our perceptions.
Yes.
Our perceptions is where we can identify whether we're living from the expansive side or whether we're living from the comfort zone. And then that is what carries out in the subconscious, that motherboard in the subconscious determines what that is. And then that determines the actions we take or don't take. So if I'm not, and what I help people do is look at their results. If you want to live abroad and you're not, and you've been wanting it for some time, it's not a fluke thing. So the fact that you're not doing it doesn't mean you don't want to do it. It means you have some things getting in the way. And so we back that up to look at the perceptions. That perception will tell us what the programming is. So we can shift the programming and then we change the perception. And then all of a sudden we see a change in our results.
Right.
And none of
And
this stuff is philosophy at all. It's all physics. It's all physics. It's all about energy flow, and everything. That's all there is energy. So if our energy is going from our programming to the perceptions of the way we perceive things, which are off from what we want, then we're going to see the results there. The only way to change those results is to go back into the programming, shift it there, the perception shift, and then you shift the results.
Right. Right. And everything is perspective. And I've really learned that through all my years of traveling. And, it wasn't just one light bulb moment of, oh, I realized, but of all the traveling and stuff I've done, that I just like to say my beliefs or my opinion, because the things that I believe in and my opinions, they are mine. They are not right. They are not wrong. They just are mine because of the life I had, my parents, where I was brought up, the way I lived, the experiences that I've had. And so I really enjoy having conversations with people who are, they have to be open. I mean, otherwise it's not a conversation. And have completely different beliefs, whether it could be, especially the ones that can get intense, are obviously religion and politics. But then just other beliefs too. And when I'm open, I like to ask people, why do you believe that?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And I ask myself that too with something. It's like, why do I believe this? Because for me to truly believe it, I have to explain why, not to say, well, because it's right, because it's the way it's always been, because that's the way it is. Like those aren't answers. But if I can say, well, when I was growing up, I had this experience or this, and my grandma always said, and this, okay, does that make it right? No.
Right.
It just makes it my experience. And so when I talk to others, like, why do you believe that? Especially like I have a very good friend of mine. We don't agree on politics and a lot of things. There's some, I mean, I don't think any political party is 100% right. I can agree and disagree with all kinds of things in all political parties. Yeah. And we'll have conversations and they're great because we kind of, push it like, why do you think that? Do you really believe that's true? Like what? And we do that push and pull. And usually at some point, when we're just like one of us will say something, the other say, I don't think that's right. I think what they mean, which is then our own interpretation, or what they said is this. And we always both say, I'll have to look into that one a little bit more and see, because I think it means this, or I think they meant this. And that's a big thing that every single one of us, we've had conversations with friends, families, loved ones. We've had arguments and they've said, well, you said this. And the response is, well, I didn't mean it that way.
Boy, how many arguments have started like that? One person, I say something to you and use the
Hmm.
words I use to explain something. You
Hmm.
take those words and you get a different meaning of understanding from them. And all of a sudden,
Hmm.
we're arguing over something that when you really break it down, we're both agreeing to the same thing with that.
Yeah.
And that's been something over time I've had to learn in working with clients and things like that
Mm.
is when I say something, I explain what I'm meaning by it. And when I do that in conversations within relationships, friendships, clients, things like that, it has a whole different meaning because even if they were starting to interpret it a certain way, that explanation brings it back to where they can understand even if I didn't use the words that they would have selected, and that can
Right.
bring so much clarity to things. Yes,
I
absolutely.
think it's one of the things, I mean, we've gone so far with technology and the things that we do and how humans have evolved just in general. And
Mhm.
the worst thing we are at is communication because our interpretation of the
Yeah.
same words can be different. What we mean to say, how we say it, how it's interpreted. And and then that comes back kind of that full circle back to what was said and how we interpret it, even as kids, as babies, as little ones, have left an impression within us that now we are working with, dealing with, figuring out, gives us our thought and beliefs
Yeah.
maybe had nothing to do or was not even meant to be the way that we interpret it as a child, which now has these lingering effects.
Yeah, I have an example for that too, Sally. Is I worked with a client not long ago, and we are on a call, and they're just really grabbing hold of these processes and stuff, and implementing them and shifting and identifying what that is. And we're just, I mean, I go, man, you are a rock star. Like you are just amazing. You're a rock star. And they go, that doesn't have a good feeling for me. And I go, what do you mean? Well, when they were growing up, whenever their mother wanted to insult them, they'd go, "Oh, you're a real rock star," as an
Ah,
insult. And so, even that, it all comes back to our programming. We live through that programming, so we live through it no matter what. There's no
yeah,
choice, but we live through that. So is that programming working for you? Is it achieving what you want to achieve in life? Are you getting the results you want to get? All of that stuff. If not, somehow you need to identify and shift that programming to get into alignment or continue living like I said with my dad and get to that end and go, man, I should have this and I should have that. And it bums me, it
shoulda, coulda,
bothers me that
woulda.
I missed that. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's not, I mean, it's unfortunate. Uh,
it is. And
it
there's nothing we can
definitely
do
is.
about it at that point.
Not, no, at that
So
point,
if
it's
we
too
look
late.
at it today, which means we have to open our mind a little bit, if we're willing to
Mhm.
look at that today, am I really doing what I truly desire and want to do in this lifetime? And if the answer
Mhm.
is no, then we can do something about it now and impact the rest of our life.
Right.
But waiting till the very end, like we can't go, we never get to redo a day of our life.
No, we can't go back. And one thing that people need to realize, and because I hear it, oh, when I retire, and I've seen it happen. I knew a gentleman who had plans, him and his wife, he was close to retirement. And their plans, they were going to travel to Europe. They were going to do all these things because he's like, she deserves it. She's put up with me for this long. And once I retire, I think he said like next year or something it was that, I'm going to take her to Europe and we're going to do all these great things. And then I was gone for several months and I had come back and one of my friends had said, oh, did you hear what happened to so and so? And I'm like, no, what? And they're like, he died. I'm like, no, he didn't. Like, yeah. And I said, no, he's retiring and he has plans. He's taking his wife to Europe. Like they have all these plans set out. They've been planning and waiting. Like, no. And they said, yeah, he had a heart attack and passed. He
Yeah,
just missed retirement and
yeah. And
all
I'll
of those
tell you
things. And
that
it's,
conversation with my dad had a very big impact on me of redefining my life, relooking at my life. And it's one of the reasons I literally resigned from corporate America to step out and do what I do because I don't want that to happen. We don't get to choose, you know, when we pass and things like that. We don't get to, and we wait and we wait and we wait. And so many people never get to experience that. And that's why my like heart goes out to anybody, and why I'm so passionate about it. If I can help anybody to identify that, shift that, and open up those doorways to the way you truly want to live. God, I feel like that's honoring my dad, and anybody I can help do that. And I define, I put together, like, the whole SMT method came through me. So it was my works and my experiences. I've been like guinea pig to everything I do and stuff. And to that side of things, what took me years to understand, comprehend, and then implement it, now people do it in weeks. They take that information from that SMT and they're able to bring about changes in weeks, what took me years to do. And I just love that. I love that I get to do what I do today.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, we're only here for a short amount of time. And I say to people, you can look at it for two ways. Even if you live till you're 100, which it's starting to become more and more common. It's not
Yes.
the average yet, but it's becoming more, and it's going to be more. I remember when I was in high school, I was probably around, I would say probably maybe not quite 16, but I would say starting about 18 to 20 years old, right in there. I started saying, and so we're going back many years. I started saying then, I'm going to live till I'm 120. And people looked at me, because we're going back about 30-ish or so years. People looked at me and they're like, you're stupid. Nobody lives till you're 120, like not even really 100. You're dumb. And I just said, just wait. Just wait and see what the future brings. There's little, like, I even knew back then there was little bits with technology and healthcare that people were working on. I'm like, you just wait and see. And now people, they're like, yeah, 120 is quite possible. Because think of, so I'm 48 right now. So to get to 120, I mean, that's still a long way to go. There's a lot of healthcare stuff, advancements that can take place. But even if we just look at 100 or even to 120, if you live that long, I say to people, you have two options. You can have the same amount of time, and it can be long and painful and miserable and hating it to a certain degree every day. Or you could have the same amount of time and have a few struggles, because that's life. I'm not going to say it's all going to be rainbows and butterflies, but you have struggles and you grow and you have enjoyment and you love it, and it goes by so fast.
And adventure and discovery and more potential and more in line with the results you want. And there's so much available there.
And it's the same. You could still be the same 100 years, the same, even 120, if you're going to be like me and push that 120 mark. How are you going to live that?
Yeah.
The choice is yours.
You hear people talk about giving up all the time because life is just so hard and this and that, and the medications and anxiety and panic and blah, blah, goes on and on and on and on. But it's because we're trying to stay in that bubble of that comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And even life will push us outside of that comfort zone.
There are things that sometimes force us to, and whether it's the death of somebody, unfortunately, us getting sick. We hear people who have, like, they unfortunately get cancer or something, heart attack. They change their life. They shift it, or career. Like, sometimes it's the universe saying, you want these changes. You want, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to make you do it. And it's not going to be a nice way, then you will do it.
And if we completely understand that, Sally, most people have some concept of that. And so now you break it down, look at it a little bit differently. We can either be pushed through life with those upsets and everything else that then we have to recover, and they become part of the programming and part of the voice we hear and make things even harder. Or we can go after what we truly want to experience. Mm-hmm. And even if both of them are difficult at times, on this one here, we get the results that we're looking for. We get to fulfill our desires while we're here, which, like you said, is a short period of time. And we all have that choice. And your listeners, everybody listening to this today, you have a choice on which way you're going to live. And nobody can do it for you. We have to be
No.
willing participants in bringing about that change. So
Mm.
anybody, if you're listening to this right now and you are identifying with the one side of this where you're struggling and life is hard and everything else, you don't have to live that way anymore. But you got to be willing to do something about that.
Right. That's right. You choose to make your life the way it is.
Even those
It's a
people living
choice.
unconsciously are choosing the life that they're
But,
living.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think that's kind of that great, it's a great way to end because it's true. You're choosing and what do you choose?
Yes.
Either way, there's challenges within life. So what do you choose? I mean, if you look at whoever is kind of your hero, your idol, your famous or whoever person that you think, wow, I would love to have that life, they have struggles and challenges too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just how they deal with it to have the life that they want. So, Joseph, if somebody's like, you're right, I need to make
Yes.
some changes, I'm
Yes.
just not really sure where I need to start. Like, I know I need to change, maybe they know some specific things in their mindset, they're struggling with
Mhm.
it, or they're just like, I just know I need to make some changes.
Yes.
How can they get in touch with you? Where's the best place to find you?
The easiest way is you can go to a website, coachwithjoey.com. And anybody can schedule a 15-minute conversation with me. I make sure I allow so many open in my calendar and such. So, and it's not a sales call or sales or anything. It's truly to talk about what you and I are talking about, but on an individual basis of somebody who's in one of those spots that doesn't want to be anymore, and just get them some tools they can use to start going forward. I have resources. I have, the things where people invest in themselves to work with me, but I also have free resources and stuff that I'm more than willing to give away to somebody, so they could just go to coachwithjoseph.com or coachwithjoey.com and
Perfect. And we'll
schedule
have a
that.
link to that within the show notes to make it even easier for people to connect with you. So I just want to say thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed talking with you, Sally. I'm like pumped up right now. Thank you.